Welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly podcast featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from fresh perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 287, we welcome special guest Raymond Ussery and Terri Gilbert from Love is My Religion. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I am the host. I'm here today in 818 Studios with my producer.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey. As always, we welcome you to a brand new week. Christmas is in full swing. It is the middle of the holidays. Things are starting to kind of, work. I'm off school now for the next 3 weeks, and I'm here for it. I do miss my pumpkin spice. I'm not going to lie.
I know you and that pumpkin
I tell you
spice.
what, I became a pumpkin guy, but happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and all of that.
Yes, happy to have you with us along your journey, dear friends. And today is a great, great day. And before we get into the show, because we have two special guests with us that we're going to introduce in a moment, but we love to thank our listeners around the country and around the world. As always, we just feel blessed and loved that you are listening and that you are sharing. And I always want to remind all of you too that, when we say we're way over 200,000 downloads now, we're the new platform. So we're starting to recount the numbers again. I don't know how I'm ever going to get a real count now, but that said, some financial support has come in and we are grateful for that. We're going to be on the air for months to come and hopefully years to come with the support that's coming in. So we're honored, we're grateful, and we are blessed to support your journey. So Dave, who are we doing a shout out for today?
We're giving a shout out to our listeners in Washington, D.C., sending tons of energy, tons of positivity, hopes, prayers for everybody in Washington, D.C. Yep.
Wow, prayer is needed, yes, and also some spiritually motivated social action. But yes, prayers, love, support, and to our listeners, we thank you, we bless you, and it's so interesting because I know there are people in higher levels of government who are listening to the show, who are doing their spiritual work. So we want you to be supported. We want you to be lifted because we know you're trying to bring light into a place where it doesn't feel like there's a lot of light right now. So we bless you and support you in that work. So thank you for listening, our friends in DC. And I was able to speak at a Unity there, and they have an amazing minister at the Unity. So I'm sure some of our Unity friends are listening as well. So, Dave, tell us what show we're on, and we're going to introduce our guests.
This is show 287, coming up on 300. Can't believe it's going to be 300 at the beginning of next year, but 287 for today.
And we have two great friends with us. Raymond Ussery, Terri Gilbert are here from Love is My Religion. So, friends, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and I wanted to have you guys on for a really long time. And Love is My Religion, first of all, just that title, I know our listeners are going, what is that? We like the sound of that because so many of us come out of religion, and what we see is that even though the very definition of the word religion means to bind together, what most of us have seen is that religion is used as a dividing force. It's us versus them. And what you all are trying to do, and I want you to speak about it, but I know what you're trying to do is, as your website says, connecting people across the cultural divide. And we're seeing in our world right now, and have been for the last several months, all this unrest, war, and it's not just what we see in the Middle East. It's in our very own cities, sometimes in our very own homes. So welcome, you guys, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what your vision is with the work you're doing with Love is My Religion.
Sure, I would love to, and really just thank you again for having us. And you've said it already, Cynthia Alice, our mission is connecting people across the cultural divide, and that's supported by our vision which is creating a world where love wins. And the belief, one of the things we hold dear is we hold love as a type of stewardship,
Mm.
meaning that we want to provide a space so healing can actually happen. And one of the ways we think healing happens is when people can truly listen to each other. So about once a month, we get folks together, um, and we encourage them. We design a space really brilliantly designed by Ren, one of our other board members, and Terri, who's with us today. We design a space so people are encouraged, supported, and gently held so they can listen to us.
Yeah, and it is a beautiful space that you're providing. I've been a part of one of those, and like some of the topics have really been amazing. And what struck me about the experience is it is it is respectful of all opinions, and I think that's something right that we don't see today. Terri, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Oh yeah, it's there's something that happens when you get heard, when somebody listens to you and you really get that they heard what you said,
Yes.
because then you don't have to talk anymore. Right, like there's something new can arise in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And we found that when we do the work, those of us who are moderating the conversations, when we do the work, we really can hear anything anybody has to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it opens up a new space for people. So there is work that we do to be able to hear anything. Like we actually sometimes mock conversations, like what happens for you physiologically when somebody says blah.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then we deal with that. We actually deal with that because our commitment overall is that people have the experience of being heard. And we don't say that something is going to happen when you get heard. We don't tell anybody that you're going to have specific results, but new results do open up for people when they have the experience of being heard.
Yes, the space that we have, and I think the space rather, when it's held properly for us, is a very healing experience. And that's what I saw happen. I experienced it myself. And, most of us, I'll say most of the people I work with one-on-one, most of the people I've had in my ministry, grew up in environments where they were to be seen and not heard, where the only opinion you were allowed is the family's opinion. And, such as that. And then if you belong to a certain faith, well, we believe only this. So it's unusual to have a dedicated environment where you're encouraged to be where you are and then loved and valued where you are. And what's so amazing about it is, like you're saying, once you're heard, well, you have the opportunity to open up to something new you don't even know is under there. And I think sometimes we're holding so strongly to an opinion because somehow it's a way we're trying to find our power. We're trying to find our value, in it, or trying to understand. And when we are heard, wherever we are, we realize we don't have to make others wrong. And that's just a very freeing place that you are creating.
There's, you hear it a lot. What you resist persists. And so if somebody's not listening to you, you have to keep pushing into that so that they'll hear it. And and if there's no resistance, then there's kind of just space for something else to arise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think often that's something else. It looks like, or it can be curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a liberal Democrat. I'm trying to think of other ways to describe myself. Those of you who are listening to the podcast, you can't see me. So I'm a black man. I grew up in the southwestern part of the United States. So shaped by all of that. So I'll label it liberal. And during times when we've had conservative folks on our Be Heard roundtables, because of the space we've created, I personally have been in a space of curiosity, like all the things I refuse to hear as a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old, now I find myself curious, like, well, what personal experience led this person to have this belief, to say the words they're saying, to be happy or joyful about what they're saying, or to be angry and sort of constricted somehow about what they're saying. So I find myself curious, and it goes from a mental curiosity to a sort of open-hearted welcoming. I can also say my mind hasn't been changed. I haven't switched from pro to anti by virtue of attending a round table, but I'm certainly more understanding and more, I'll leave it at understanding of people who don't share the views that I have. And that in itself is a gift.
Well, that was going to be, go ahead, Terri. What were you going to say, sir?
I have found myself taking actions that I would never take. I was like, okay, was there good things economically that happened under this presidency? I'm going to go look now, because my bubble had none of that, and it allowed me to start looking for things that I wouldn't normally look for, which wreaked havoc on my news algorithm. But who cares, right?
Oh, I know. Well, of course, that's it's interesting you mentioned that the algorithmic hell we find ourselves in is partially because of the way those systems are set up. We only hear more of our own opinion, and it has caused an interesting divide that to me is new in the certainly last decade, in a way that I had never experienced before. So, I grew up in the South, the youngest of a whole bunch of kiddos, the youngest of 9 kids. And we, in the rural South, and we were unlike most families in that we always had, like I had what I call my extra dad, who was a black man. He was my dad's best friend. And so that's always influenced the way I look at the world, very different than most white folks. So anyway,
especially in the South.
Yeah, especially in the South, exactly. So anyway, but given that, and my dad was a businessman that largely during my life, because I was the youngest, was working from home. Every day we met people who were different from us. They were like, one was a diamond dealer in New York City. The other one would be a local politician. Another would be worked for the sheriff's department. My dad happened to be a deputy sheriff simply because he wanted to always carry. In those days, that's what you did. You became a deputy sheriff, so you could always carry a weapon. So my dad bought and sold guns. That was a part of my life. I'm the one that cleaned the guns. Like that was a part of my upbringing. So I'm saying all this to say we had such a variety of people in our lives on any given day that this idea that someone who thought differently from us would not be welcome or would be ostracized or would be a them is completely foreign to me. Like completely, like that was never in how we were raised at all. And always room for another at the table. You have money, you don't have money, all are welcome here. So this dynamic we've been in as a country, I find it highly concerning. That said, I don't want to be in fear. I want to do my part. That's part of what this show is, to help people live from this higher awareness. So I want you guys to say a little bit more, if you can, about the various topics. Like, I know you did a topic on guns. I know you've done, the Democrat Republican. I know you've done LGBTQ issues. Yeah, tell us a little bit about those issues.
Let's see where to start. I mean, one of the most impactful for me personally was the roundtable, the Be Heard roundtable we did on abortion. Frankly, because of it's not an area that I was familiar with, so we did what I call a personal panel where we invited folks from our lives to talk to us, both pro-life and Wow. Pro-life and not pro-life. What do you,
Pro-choice.
pro-choice.
Not
So both
pro-life.
pro-life and yeah, well, so
God,
we had a
yeah.
panel before the round table just so we could talk about it because we knew it would be a charged topic, and we also
Yes.
knew as a board, as moderators, we would have to explore, well, where are we personally,
Where are
and
you?
how does it feel?
Mhm.
And then to actually have the round table and listen to someone who is firmly pro-life, to the degree to which that there's the person's stance, to sum up, was there's no good reason for abortion, and it should absolutely be illegal. And this was well before Roe v. Wade was overturned. I can say to you that 2 years ago, if you told me that I was going to listen to a person have that stance with compassion and come to a place of understanding, uh, I would have said that's not possible because of my beliefs. But when this person shared what they shared, certainly because of the work the board did to prepare, but when they shared authentically and from their heart about their beliefs, and because it was a safe / brave container of curiosity, it was more like, please tell me more. What in your life has brought you to this place? And when they spoke, we could actually hear and appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular event was pretty extraordinary because this person actually said it's murder. That's just my belief. I'm sorry, right? When they said that, and the thing that happened in the room, which was so remarkable, was the people who had shared about having an abortion, or people in their lives who had an abortion. Their experience was that, because a lot of people had shared that, was that there was no diversity in the room. So when that woman shared that, they were left with, I actually got heard by somebody on the other side, and their experience was way more profound because she'd listened, and she had listened, and so it was remarkable, right? That's one of the things that we found is when people of differing opinions are in the room together, it's quite extraordinary, especially when somebody clearly is the other, and they don't respond the way you were afraid that they would respond. And we've also done on vaccination, and we've done events on. We did an event on labels, that one was remarkable because we had no idea how deep that would go, and it was actually really great. There was somebody who was sharing. They were from the sex positive community, but they didn't really like to be labeled a particular way, in the polyamory community, because they didn't really like to be, they didn't like that label. And so they actually got a sense that they could, they could call themselves whatever they want, what they were empowered to. But then later on, when somebody was sharing about how they were not Republican, how they were libertarian, this person spoke up again. They're like, wow, I should stop calling myself Republican. And that just messed with a whole bunch of people in the room. There was actually somebody later who said, when you were talking sex positive stuff, I was clear that you had to be a liberal. But then you said you were Republican, and it just messed with me entirely. So that's, one of the extraordinary things that happens is
Yes.
you get to see the nuance of people.
The nuance. Well, we're all, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I find as humans, I find us to be quite complex and simple in that we all have basic needs of food, shelter, and love. Complex that we are nuanced, and that I just had someone say to me recently, a dear family member who I love, who said, I'm socially Democrat, but financially Republican. And I said, well, good luck with that in today's parties. And she started laughing, and I said, but I get it. And I've heard statements like that. And again, part of the algorithmic nightmare is those two can't coexist. as you're saying, we're literally brainwashed by the media in terms of thinking this means that. And these ways we've separated are quite damaging, I think, to the whole, because we're put in boxes that we don't belong in, where people are thinking thoughts and making assumptions that are based on what someone else said, not on who we really are.
And I think that just reminded me of, in the evolution of our roundtables,
Mm-hmm.
we started out just having people be heard, and
Mm-hmm.
and then we thought, well, it would be nice to be able to have people interact a little bit. So we implemented being able to ask questions, right? Asking questions that you've were afraid to ask, or you couldn't ask those kinds of questions, right? So one of the things people could do is say, well, what's it like? What's it like living in a Republican or a conservative household and being gay? Like there's a lot of questions that people could start to ask, just because the space was created where it was we call it a brave space, not a safe space, because
Yes.
there's really no such thing.
Well, the safe space is in us, right? And I think that culturally, a concern I have too is that right now we're seeming to have no inner strength, and that if everybody doesn't call me exactly like I need, that I'm going to vilify you. And what the idea that I'm trying to instill in my home, and I have a 16-year-old son who's amazingly strong in his inner awareness of himself, is that somebody can have an opinion of me, somebody can say, they can call me the wrong name or the wrong whatever, and I'm good because I know myself. And when I was talking about growing up, it's really interesting how in my 50s in my 30s I was noticing everything wrong with how I was raised. In my late 30s and early 40s, I mean, I've been in therapy since I was 15 years old. It's always been about healing. And in my 50s, I'm seeing all the good things that, made me who I am. And one of those things, as you were talking, Terri, I was thinking about how, some of these conversations I was talking about with these people that would be at the home, or we'd be having dinner or whatever, or, it'd be with our friend, Mr. Willie, and we'd chat, whatever. And it was like, okay, well, I don't really think that, but okay, let's go fishing. You know what I mean? It was just, it was like over, like, what are we having for dinner? I mean, but that came from this inner knowing and this inner strength of knowing that you love me as I am. And, it's just where I'm at right now, and, cool. And so I feel like that's what you guys are trying to create is some way of knowing yourself to the degree that you can make room for others wherever they might be. And it doesn't mean you don't have values. It doesn't mean you don't have your own center. You know yourself even better. That's my takeaway from my experience with you all.
Well,
It's so great that it's the thing. One of the things that you just said was about how when you're in your 50s, you can actually hear things a lot better, and that may actually explain our demographic some. We've got that older group that is more willing to be in the conversation. Mm-hmm. But we actually have had events where we had a young Black woman who was just sharing about traveling across the United States, and she said, something about how Republicans are racist, and because we'd done the work in the room, we said, hold on, right? That's not that those two things aren't equivalent, and and they were this woman was getting ready to go on a road trip with her friend, and they were like, okay, well, maybe we should see this a little bit different, because they weren't going to be traveling in the South. So and that was one of the things that was personally gratifying to me, just to to alter somebody's listening at a time when it was pretty critical.
Oh, yeah.
I
Beautifully
thought
said.
that was
Raymond, what were you going to say? Yeah.
just that. Well, a whole bunch, but that was brilliant. That specific call, and I think on these calls we actually these forums, so to speak, we don't coach, but because we set up in the ground rules that generalizing or being disrespectful to a group of people is against one of the ground rules. So we were able to point back to say, oh, if you're saying this whole group is awful,
Mm-hmm.
that's not your personal experience. What is your personal experience?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a doorway into having this young person examine, oh, where they'd had a specific experience, but they'd begin to generalize it to a population of people. And I think one of the
Mm-hmm.
freedoms, one of the things that comes out of these calls is I believe an ability for people to go out in their lives and to get messy because there's a safety in having one's beliefs and not talking about them or only talking about them with people who agree. But I
Yes.
think people leave our calls empowered to talk to that uncle, cousin, distant friend that they stopped talking to for fill in the blank any reason given today's climate change, guns, abortion, religion, just pick a topic. I think people leave our calls. I think and I feel and I know from our survey results that people leave our calls more empowered to go out and get a little messy, to be a little more brave in their lives and start to engage in those conversations and to just to start to connect, perhaps in a way they hadn't connected to others before.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And I think if all that people got out of the calls was compassion for another, uh, that's worth the work you're doing. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight it is the idea that everyone has to be right or wrong is a pretty hopeless place to be, because you think, what's wrong with everyone else? And there's no understanding, there's no wisdom gained. And uh, again, my concern about the cultural tendencies to overjudge and retaliate and react has gotten us where we are. And even, watching this recent thing with Hamas, out of from the
Mm.
Palestinians and Israel, and then Israel's response and all of that. At the time everybody's vilifying Hamas, then the response is exactly the same, and that's glorified. So I feel that anything that's happening in the outer world is a reflection of our own inner process. It always has been, and it always will be. So I think
Mm.
that the healing that we have an opportunity to do as individuals is to look at that and say, is this a dynamic I want to keep living in my life, or do I want to find another way? And the truth is, it's hard to find another way. It takes a great deal of effort and self love and discipline to question ourselves, because, we want everybody to give us the answer. We're in a society where, like, we're viewing society rather than participating in society, and so the spiritual call that I feel is to seek to uh, watch my thoughts, guard my thoughts, to question my attitudes and my beliefs. Anytime I'm leaving somebody out, I know I'm not in a oneness consciousness, and that's what I believe I'm called
Mm.
to, for me
Mm.
personally. And as I've watched my son and his spiritual development, that's where he's at. He's already at 16 understanding, if we don't move into oneness consciousness as a society, we're going to die. And all the
Mm.
greatest minds have said that. All the greatest minds in history have said that if we don't find a way to get along, we're going to annihilate ourselves. And so usually when we experience it on the individual, we're not really understanding the larger collective and how it's impactful and how it's a reflection of us.
I'm just really moved by the what you said around self-love, because I really do think that part of what um, I think part of why the board all participates the way we do is because it builds something in us, right? Like there is, I love to do this because of how I grow with it. But I didn't see it until you said that, right? That a lot of the work that I've done is around, just loving myself so that I can stray, right? And I can look, right? Because I'm grounded, and that, and, in my own personal journey with my kids, that's one of the things that, I can't, that's definitely something I can't do for them. And so, that just creating the space for them to find that for themselves, that's the, I've got 3 grown kids, and each one of them has struggled, especially in that area right there. Just being able to be, just to love who they are and what they stand for and where they are in the world, that. So I love that you said that, because it just occurs to me like there's something about that we can bring to our events, and I'm going to work on how to incorporate that. So thanks.
Oh, very good. Raymond, what were you going to say? Yeah.
Oh, that's who knows what I was going to say. That's awesome. I love that this podcast is helping shape our roundtables. But there was something I could hear about reflecting on my own inner process and borrowing from, it was probably A Course in Miracles, some text, and we worked it. We weaved it through our board effort. Is that people are either an expression of love or a request for love, and certainly bringing out to our roundtables is valuable. But speaking or thinking about inner work in this moment, it's like, oh, I walk through my day or attempt to engage with people knowing that I'm a request for love or an expression of love, and that has, when I'm present, it opens my heart bigger and bigger, and I can actually see the light that someone else is. Whereas when I'm not in that space, it's like, oh, they're a distraction or they're obstructing my progress. Get the heck out of my way.
Exactly.
But now the shift is so dramatic. It's like, oh, I wasn't in my heart. I wasn't coming from, what we talk about around the round tables So just brilliant.
That actually reminds me of something that happened yesterday. My husband and one of my kids were going at it, and he was sharing with me what was going on, and I'd actually just come from an event where I was I was really grounded, and one of the things that he said was, he says, she said this, she said that, and this, and I just don't have the space for that. And I said, well, what is taking up all of your space?
Beautiful.
And he said, well, when you put it that way, it just sounds stupid.
Right. Just anger and resentment. That's all. Yeah.
And then he was fine, and he went back and cleaned up everything with her. So it was really great.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Well, we did a show a few weeks ago called Space for Grace.
Excellent.
And I feel like that's what we created. And for me, that space is about, when I want to react, leaving a little space so that if I can breathe into that, then I'm giving them a grace. Because listen, we're all human. We all say and do dumb stuff. We all have personalities where we react when, there's some perceived threat. And sometimes it's totally unconscious, that reaction. But then if we surround ourselves with people that are doing similar work and they don't react, instead go, okay, so, then it, it gives us all a little hope that, oh yeah, I can come out of that. And in my house, we have a family honor code. We don't really have rules. We have a family honor code that either of us can enforce with the other. So one of the honor codes is telling the truth. Another one is to talk it out. Another one is to sing it out, which is really fun because you cannot stay arguing if you have to sing. It's hilarious. We pretend we're in a musical and we get dramatic, and then it's just dumb, right? So, and then there's no yelling, no name calling, no blaming, right? And then we celebrate successes. So there's a list of them. But so it's me and my son, and if my son, sees that I'm, one of them is take care of yourself, just take care of yourself. And if,
wow, that's awesome.
So if I'm doing all the stuff, he'll say, Mom, have you rested? And I'm like, oh, you know what? He said, well, you could just lie down for a while. I go, yeah, I could, or if he's saying, can you do this? Can you do that? And I'll say, I'm happy to help, baby, but are you taking care of yourself? How can I help you? Yes. And what can you do for you? And he'll go, I got it. He's 16. He's more mature than most 30-year-olds. And I really believe it's because he's been given a responsibility for that, to hold that code in his own heart rather than me saying, no, don't do this. No, don't do that. And that he has the power, if I'm out of alignment, to call me on it. I want him to. I don't want to be the kind of parent that yells and stomps through the house and scares everybody. I know my power without doing that. He's the best kid anybody can ask for. And I really think it's because he has his own power in this house. Not that there aren't, guidelines. Of course there are. Not that there aren't boundaries. There are. But he's part of holding the boundary as well for himself. Yeah. And so I feel like this is the work that you all do with it, respecting oneself, respecting each other. Like one of your phrases on your website is open ears, open minds, open hearts. Yeah. And so when you're going into any situation like that, I think chances are people are going to be heard and knowledge and wisdom is going to be gained. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a reciprocal relationship of responsibility. We continue to call each other higher and higher.
Yes. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Well, Raymond and Terri, thank you so much. Dave and I always love having guests on the show, and especially the work you're doing with Love is My Religion. And I want to mention that, of course, in the show notes, we'll have a way for our listeners, if you guys want to tap into what they're doing. The web address will be there, information, and, you can subscribe easily if you go onto their website, which is limr.us. And I think a pop-up, will come right away, that call to action to be a part of something. This is something powerful. This is something special. And if all today's show does for our listeners is help them pause before reacting, that's making the world a better place. We want to be a place of love, a place of peace, and we want to do that within ourselves first, friends, and then that extends out to our communities and our families, our jobs, and even the world. So, friends, thank you for joining us today, and to our listeners, thank you so much for your love, for your support, and for your financial blessing, because that does keep us on the air and keeps us able to bring you these shows wherever you may be. So, again, to our friends in Washington, D.C., we love you, we bless you, and dear friends, we look forward to seeing you next week. So blessings on the journey, dear friends.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2023, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.